Hello and good evening, and thank you for joining us here on the Awareness Magazine TV show. Tonight we have a past guest, and she's here with us again, Tracey Ash, and she's from England. She is a teacher and spiritual speaker. She is also a book author, and she conducts tours to Egypt and Japan and many other places around the globe. And so I'd like to thank Tracey Ash for being here again. Thank you, Tracey.
Oh, thank you. It's an honor to be here again.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, we had a great interview before, so we wanted to have another one with you. And I'd like to start out tonight with talking about your book. It is called Ancient Egyptian Celestial Healing, the Source Codes for Higher Frequency. And so I will let you tell the audience a little bit about how you began to write this book.
Wow. The beginning is almost in my 20s, my mid-20s. I had a past life session where the past life facilitator could not take me into a wound-orientated past life memory. I refused it, and this spun me into a past life scenario where I was placed in Egypt, and I immediately looked down at my feet and saw myself as a man, as a male, dressed in gala bear. And I went on to draw the site and remember the exact details of the site.
Wow.
Many years later, I arrive at the site.
How exciting.
That I'd drawn. And there were incredible calcite healing bowls associated with the site, which the archaeologists had moved. And I knew that these bowls had been driven into a matrix on the floor of the temple. And I stepped into the temple and I started to search for the other bowls, which were still they were still embodied in the floor of the temple.
Wow.
Wow. Wow. And that past life memory placed me exactly with Akhenaten and in his royal household. Now, my book was written post 2011 through many journeys in Egypt, but it is particularly sourced into the Arab Spring when every tourist was leaving Egypt. We were stepping onto a plane as a group of pioneers. And so every temple, every site that we visited was completely still, completely quiet, completely empty. On the final day of the tour, we'd been meditating very consciously for world peace, for contribution, for purpose, for service. On the final day of my tour, it was midday, the 21st of March, 2011, so spring equinox. Obviously always associated with the gateways opening, so it gives us a real sacred rite of passage, a connection with the divine, the cosmos, the universe. And on that final meditation, where the group also witnessed it, I filmed 16 minutes of incredible contact activity where feathers were manifest, multiple orbs activity, communication that showed me where to take the focus of the group in terms of world healing and world contribution. We also targeted peace and healing for Fukushima. And of course, Japan then afterwards becomes such an important piece in my global work. And so every part of the experience at this temple site on the west bank of Luxor, it became so instrumental in terms of all of the work that I now do worldwide in terms of the Earth grid and working at powerful premier power sites all over the world. What I now know so much more, I'm so much more aware of it, is that the ancient peoples left stories encrypted, held at particular sites. And when we show up and when we're prepared to acknowledge and not marginalize the ancients or the indigenous peoples, and when we enter their sacred spaces with integrity and dignity and without ego, there are extraordinary stories and realities awaiting our experience
to teach us and help us.
Yes, and to show us the way.
The way.
And the education then becomes unprecedented. And we're clearly then not defined in a superficial way, a way which determines a reality that is not full of the gifts of dreams and miracle realities and sacred stories and stories that serve humanity and planet. And so it gives us a significant accelerated learning curve. Now remember, 2011 precedes what we call the 2012 shift, the awakening. And what the book very much underpins is what Egypt means in the awakening when so much of this arena, our spiritual arena, was focusing on the Mayan calendar. But for me, the incredible missing pieces in what's happening now, the awakening ascension, it has been left behind in all of the evidence in Egypt. Now, the ancients, because of their connections with the time before time, all indigenous peoples have this connection, the practice that takes them into the creation story, that takes them into the time before time, that takes them into God itself. And when we reference that, then we reference ourselves in the now, but it also offers us the corridor and the journey into registering or acknowledging or accessing our future. So the ancient Egyptians clearly left the prophecy for these times in ancient Egypt. Now this is written, it's written in the Dendera zodiac.
And tell our viewers what that is exactly, because not everyone knows what that is.
The Dendera zodiac, in the most simple explanation I can give, is it's a prophecy device. It outlines the changes, the astrological changes, the cycles that take place, wherein a current change in terms of the precession of the equinox, a 26,000 year cycle. It takes us, for example, from an old paradigm where our gods have been more superficial, our agenda has been more superficial, more patriarchal. We have indeed lost our way in terms of ourselves and our values. And the Dendera zodiac, it details the choices of humanity, and it details these current times and the choices that humanity has at this time, and whether we choose to move through the corridor of awareness, of awakening, of acknowledgement. And that takes us into recognizing ourselves in a very different story. It takes us into recognizing ourselves as sacred women, as sacred men, as sacred children. And it takes us into a new model as human beings. It takes us into a model where we no longer can be manipulated. It takes us not only into the awakening, it takes us into awakening within. So the ascension is embodied, which allows us to make a choice about our programming. It makes a choice about what we acknowledge. It makes choices about what we attach ourselves to. These are such critical times.
Absolutely, because there are so many false attachments right now.
Absolutely. Now, Egypt is exciting. Of course, I love the history, but I love the sacred technologies. In order to untangle ourselves from false agendas and false attachments, we must change our frequency. Now, this is where pyramids, power sites, sacred sites, not only in Egypt, but all over the planet, are super critical. Because when we show up at a power site, we get an upsurge through our whole energy system, through our life force.
And how does that happen? Explain to the viewers in the pyramid, and you're at the power site. What is, for lack of better words, kind of pulsing through from the energy? What is that? And maybe just delve into that a little bit for the viewers,
So, pyramid. Let me just explain. The Egyptians named pyramid Pernita. Pernita is translated as house of God.
Wow.
So, as an initiation rite, oh my goodness, you're stepping into the house of God, the reality that has been constructed, created for you to experience God, the beyond, the universe, the cosmos directly. Now, this is huge in terms of awakening, transformation, evolution, waking people up. I mean, it hits your biology, your well-being, your intelligence, and it ramps up, it upgrades you on multiple levels in terms of who you are as a human being. Now, it's giving you that essential plug in. What we don't have in terms of modern life is often time and energy. And time and being able to bend time to be able to move beyond a survival mode
Right.
is dependent upon energy. So again, I come back to it. It's not only about your spiritual practices or how much meditation you do or how many books you read in terms of spiritual arena. It's also about how prepared you are to step into the earth, step into our Garden of Eden. Now this is interesting because of course the Dendera zodiac references that fall from the Garden of Eden, which is the choices that we make, almost the disconnect from Gaia, which takes us into, we now need to rethink what serves us, and the earth serves us.
Absolutely. There's so much healing energy in the earth.
Yes.
And to be connected to it, it's wonderful.
Let me just explain something.
Please, yes.
When I enter into a site, and some of the most profound sites, the premier sites, for example, stepping into the Great Pyramid, I do ceremony in both the Queen's Chamber and the King's Chamber.
Yeah.
Now, when you step into that extraordinary structure, you can hear the roaring sound of silence. No words can describe it. When you step into that experience, and if you can hold your awareness just for long enough, you know you are entering into one of or some of the most extraordinary sacred experiences that are possible. And that's when you can listen to a very different story, both of the earth, but equally in terms of the universe and going beyond. And because power sites give you that all-important upsurge in terms of your energy levels, and very real and significant detox in terms of low frequency, wounds are transformed miraculously also.
Wow.
As the whole field is refined, detoxed, purified. Your heart becomes lighter. Your mind becomes clearer. You have a connection with something more within yourself. So you have a connection with something else that is so much more too.
Yeah.
Extraordinary.
That's fascinating. And then earlier you did tell me that there is a newly discovered pyramid in Cyprus, and you were invited to go there and help with the unveiling of this pyramid.
I am. In June, I've been invited to take a group to Cyprus. I'm always super interested, not just in sites and in data. I'm interested in the experimental work that needs to be done in and around the Earth grid, and the very real and significant direct work, experimentation with power sites. I am an expert with a global circuit of power sites that are critical in terms of what comes next for humanity. We've got to activate these sites. We've got to understand what these sites were designed for, why they are still so present in our reality, how they are holding the current changes, assisting. The ancients are still assisting us, even at this time.
By what they've left behind for
Yes,
us.
the technologies. There's so much evidence that, for example, pyramids rebalance seismic activity. It's very common knowledge in Japan, where I work, where Shinto works through the energy pathways. And the power base, the premier power site of Mount Fuji, is a natural pyramid structure, which I believe allows Japan to stay intact regardless of perpetual natural disasters. So it's hugely interesting. You know, certainly some of this knowledge that I have has also been gifted to me by certainly some of the shamans in Japan. So I had contact with some of the Okinawan priestesses. Those particular shamanistic priestesses spoke openly about their journeys to particular sites to work the earth grid, to offset the seismic activity, to heal and transform the earth. So I travel, for example, to sites to understand what happens not only to the people I work with, to upscale their evolution, their awakening, their transformation and healing, but then there is also a new paradigm coming in terms of how we include working at power sites too. And that means we can work and devise new ways of healing the planet and work through power sites to assist in holding the changes. And we can do that very critically with very few people. So we don't have to critically ascend or evolve en masse. We can contribute greatly if we understand how to weave various dimensions. And also at the same time, once we acknowledge transforming ourselves, then those stargates, which they are, pyramids, sites are particular stargates. Those stargates can also draw in universal assistance. So, for example, if your viewers have some interest in contact, then premier power sites and ancient sites, you'll see contact, you'll see activity, and that's verified by, for example, Dr. Greer's Sirius project.
Okay.
Yeah?
And tell us about his project.
Well, to take us into sky watching, both day and night, and to scientifically log contact and have verification not only from individuals but from groups. For example, when I'm in Japan, when I'm in Egypt, when I'm in Australia, I also combine my power site trips with contact trips, sky watching too.
Okay.
And the sky watching becomes an extraordinary process where it takes us out of generic meditation. So we're engaging with the earth, we're engaging with nature, we're engaging with the sky. And that becomes a very exciting experience. And when you do witness contact, because you know that I do. I have a library of extraordinary contact photographs.
Yes, you do. You do.
For me as a facilitator, I couldn't dream for a second about speaking about contact if I haven't had it myself. Because what I want to do is constantly share what contact is, and then what it does in terms of upgrading your consciousness, upgrading your internal reality, and delivering very real metaphysical gifts. Now, this accelerates your ascension. So you're falling away from generic strategies, superficial strategies. Now you're interested in this too.
Yes, and it's important that people do, fall away from the generic structure. Yes. And I'm so glad we had you on the show. Your information is so important. You've helped your work. You're helping us so much, and it's an honor to have you back here. And we'll have you on again because you have so much wonderful knowledge and so many wonderful stories. It's so thank you for your time, Tracey. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Tracey, and thank you for joining in, and I appreciate it. Have a good day. Bye-bye.